Hello, and welcome back to my series on Life is Strange 2, where I discuss with you why we love Life is Strange. So I went over my thoughts on the first episode, and we're just going to roll right on with episode 2 now. So episode 2 opens up with both brothers in an abandoned house. It's in the middle of winter, there's snow everywhere, and they're starting to train up Daniel's power. So at the very end, the highlight of episode 1, it's officially revealed that Daniel's got powers, he's got telekinesis, and so we start episode 2 right into that, and now we're training his powers, and that's all just a pretty basic good bonding scene. There's so many good bonding scenes between the brothers in this whole franchise. It's unbelievable. But so from there they head into the house, and it's established that Daniel's sick, and so they're gonna have to move on. That's kind of the reoccurring thought of this entire series: is we can't stay here, we gotta go. And it's this early in the game, you haven't really established that as the audience yet, or at least I hadn't. Like, we know that they've got to go somewhere, but we eventually think that they're going to settle somewhere as well. So it's like, okay, Daniel's sick, we can't stay in this abandoned house forever, we're running out of food. So they decide to go visit their grandparents, which starts kind of the first major kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, just the odd and a very awkward interaction is what this starts, because the grandparents are, of course, their mother's parents, and their mother's no longer in the picture, and so it's like, ooh, it's just going to be awkward. And Daniel hasn't even met their grandparents yet, and here they are about to go seek them out in their most desperate of moments. So that's what we're walking into at the start of episode 2. For me, I mean, we're right around the corner of a pretty emotional scene here. But for me, what really takes the cake this early on in the game is when Sean sits outside to smoke a cigarette, and he tries and focuses his powers, or tries to focus his powers, like as though he has them, but he clearly doesn't. The audience kind of wants him to. You can see him trying, but there's nothing there. And for me, that's the first real emotional hit of this episode, to see him wanting that and to see him trying for it so hard, and it's just nothing. It's not there. So then we wake up next morning, time to go. They let Mushroom out, and you're doing your thing or whatever. And then it starts to get kind of odd because Mushroom never came back. So Daniel goes to look for him. And you're not immediately alerted to there being a problem at this point, but, something's going on. And then, of course, then Sean's like, okay, Daniel hasn't come back. The dog hasn't come back. What's going on here? So you start your little search looking for Mushroom. And, of course, you come across the fact that Mushroom has been killed by a wild cat. And I know there's a huge amount of people who were heartbroken by this. And, I mean, yeah, you just... Mushroom was like the sign of hope in this series, and they literally killed that sign off. And not to mention the fact that Mushroom was just a puppy. So, yeah, that was a hard scene for a lot of people to swallow. And just another good emotional scene. Like I said, for me, it was seeing Sean try and use his powers. That's what really hit home for me. But I could absolutely see if Mushroom's death was the first thing that really hit you this early on in the episode, that makes total sense. But like I said, for me personally, it was the attempt at power, just because it was such a different scene, and it shows so much in Sean's character. And I mean, probably it's a little biased because you're comparing Mushroom, who had a very short stint with the series, to Sean, who is literally the main character. That's kind of where I stand that early on. And don't get me wrong, I'm not downplaying Mushroom scene at all. Like, that was darn heart wrenching. But at the end of the day, the truest emotion that early on for me comes from that mentioned scene. So then we get the montage of the brothers traveling through the snow and through the wilderness, eventually to the road, and then into the town, and then they finally get to their grandparents' house. The montages in this series are awesome, and that is due mostly in part to the fact that the art is just so beautiful here. Like, I can sit and watch a montage of their animation to incredible music, by the way, and that could be the entire game, and I'd probably be pretty satisfied. I wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. It wouldn't have changed my life and my view of storytelling the way it had if that's all it was. But if that's all it was, it would be entertaining in and of its own. Can't speak enough to how beautiful of a game this is, and I can't speak enough to how wonderful the soundtrack is. And then you add the incredible story and the fact that you get to interact with the story and those characters. It's truly a special experience. So montage is over. You're at the grandparents' house. You knock on the door. They don't answer. You knock again, and then boom, they're there. You've met. It's awkward, but it's kind of comfortable at the same time. They do a really good job at kind of keeping you on edge. I've played through this with multiple friends multiple times. Now, when I first played through it, we were at Grandma and Grandpa's, like we were safe. But I have had multiple people who were like, "Oh no, I don't know why we went here. I don't trust these people. Let's go." So it's amazing that they can write it in such a way that it invokes such drastically different feelings from people. But essentially, Sean and Daniel end up sticking to it. They stick with the grandparents for a while, and things seem to be going relatively well. Nothing too major has happened. Daniel befriends the neighbor kid Chris, who, if we played the prologue, if you will, you'll know who Chris is, and you'll already be attached to that character. The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit is like by far one of the most unique gaming experiences out there. That's what hooked me in Life is Strange. I had played The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit, and then I was like, well, now I have to figure out what this Life is Strange is about because this game was so unique. And Life is Strange is almost a completely different game from what the Adventures of Captain Spirit were, but it's a welcomed difference in every aspect of it. So anyway, things are going on. The brothers are living with their grandparents. They've befriended the neighbor kid, and of course something has to go awry. And that naturally looks like it's going to be Karen's room. I think everybody kind of knew that they were hinting at Karen's room. They were hinting at Karen's room. They were hinting at Karen's room. So everybody was like, okay, so we're gonna break into Karen's room. They're gonna kick us out. Whatever, that's gonna happen. Or maybe they're gonna break into her room and maybe they'll let us stay, but it's gonna be more awkward. That was more the direction I was going with it, just because Claire was so darn strict with her rules. I was like, okay, we're gonna break into this room. They're not gonna be happy about it. We'll stick around, but it'll be really awkward. But no, that's not what we get. Grandpa gets crushed by a cupboard, and you could or could not save him. And then, well, I guess you save him either way. It's just a matter of whether or not his legs are okay. And then from there, the police are called. They spotted you at the Christmas market. You're on the run again. And for me, this was a heart-wrenching reality to the fact that what the life that these brothers once had will never come back. Like, at the end of episode 1, you still have that hope that you can go back to normal. Midway through episode 2, I still had that hope that we could go back to normal. We could live in hiding with our grandparents or whatever it may be. Of course, if you walk in knowing that this story is going to be a travelogue, you're going to know better than to expect them to stay there. But I didn't walk in with that prior knowledge. So I honestly thought, I was like, okay, we're going to settle in with the grandparents. We're going to live kind of under the grid. That's what we're going to do. And then the police officer happens. You've got to go. They've got that amazing piano score going while they're running away. Absolutely heart-wrenching scene right there. And like I said, for me, it was a realization that the brothers are never going to be able to return to normal. This is always going to be a thing. This is going to be them. This is their story. They're going to settle in a place or attempt to settle in a place or start to settle in a place and then they're going to have to leave. And it's going to be heart-wrenching every time. Not so much to a predictable manner, though. Like, obviously, I just spelled out a lot of things, and it's like if I figured all this out in episode 2, then the series is going to seem like it's very predictable, but it's absolutely not. Like, we know what needs to happen, but we don't know all the components as to why it'll happen every time. So, the brothers are on the log. Chris may or may not have been hit by a car. There's so many different things that could have happened in this scene, but for whatever reason, I always go back to the music in this series. When they're playing First Aid Kit as the brothers are jumping onto the train and then it fades to black, and then we're playing the credits, and First Aid Kit's blaring through. That got me too. That almost got me just as hard as the running away scene. The scene where when they're actively leaving to Jonathan Morelli's beautiful piano song Home, that hits. And then they're trying to catch this train, and you've got First Aid Kit hitting you with I Found a Way. And it's like this mixture of like desperate hope, like you're desperately clinging on to hope, but at the same time it's hopeless and it's sad. And it sums up the end of chapter 2 so brilliantly, because that's what chapter 2 was. It was hopeless and it was sad. Like we hoped for so much, and all we got was just sad, sad, sad. And it set us up for like, okay, now we're 2 chapters into a 5-chapter adventure. We kind of know what we're in for. Let's see how you can break our hearts in episode 3.